whole town's batting about Cincinnati. What a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.
Hello, Reds fans, and welcome to another edition of We Love Our Team. Along with my partner, Randy Freking, I'm Jack Greiner, and today we are pleased to welcome Tim Elsbrock, the regional president of Fifth Third in Cincinnati. Tim is a native Cincinnatian, a proud graduate of UC, and a lifer at Fifth Third. According to Tim, he grew up surrounded by hardy Germans who worked hard and valued doing it right. Aunts and uncles who circled a picnic table in the backyard playing nickel and dime poker. They were good, solid people embedded with honest values and a dedicated work ethic. Having known Tim for 30 years, I can vouch that he learned those lessons well. Tim, welcome to We Love Our Team.
Hey, thanks for having me. Fun to be here. Very nice.
Hey, Tim, I'm glad you referenced the German culture. I'm German myself, 100%, I believe. Jack tells me a lot of good things about you. You guys have known each other for a long time. Tells me you're pretty funny, so I'm looking forward to an entertaining show.
Well, if you know Jack well, you know to question his judgment then.
But, you know, he told us about UC, but he did not mention the existential question in Cincinnati, which is, where did you go to high school?
I didn't know if you were going to go east side, west side, or high school. So you went the high school route, right? So, you know, I did. I went to the greatest baseball high school in all of Ohio. I went to Moeller High School. I mean, like, look at the alumni there. And, I mean, Coach Mike Cameron. I mean, even he's in, like, so, yeah.
You get no arguments from us. I'm a LaSalle guy, as you know. Randy's an ex guy, so we've got a good chunk of the GCL here. But Mike Cameron's a former guest of our podcast.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he's great. And if you ever run into him, and maybe you know the story about the first time they went to the state championship and how the team had to hitchhike up there because their bus broke down.
No, I did not. The baseball team.
The baseball team. And he put them in batting order. He figured like they're on the side of 71 in batting order. Anyway, great guy.
That's a great story.
Now, I think, Tim, if I recall, you grew up in Reading. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay,
yeah.
So here we go. Here comes our Reds trivia question for you. What one-time Reds pitcher grew up in Reading, Ohio?
Jack, like, what do you think? I'm a rookie? Like, come on. Claude Osteen.
Nice. Outstanding. Yes.
Yeah.
Probably people know him more as a Dodger, but he did start his career with the Reds. And
I think he graduated from Reading High School, actually.
I think he did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. He did. So I would say, I put together a few years ago an all Cincinnati team, a team of guys who grew up in Cincinnati, and he and Jim Bunning were my two starting pitchers. So that's not bad.
Jim Bunning, the Saint X
guy,
guy who is in the Hall of Fame, I believe.
He is.
Yeah. And, right along with Barry Larkin and Ken Griffey Jr.
Yes, and Larkin and Griffey. And
now, what are the Lancers? Who are the Lancers in the Hall of Fame?
Chris Naring, there's a few of them. But no, now on my all-time Cincinnati team, by the way, props to more. We had Buddy Bell at third. We had Larkin at short, and we had Griffey Jr. in center. So that says a lot, man.
That's a pretty good crew. Yeah,
pretty good crew. That's pretty good.
Also, Reading was that was home to me. Like, and they had a lot of really good, everybody else says east side, west side, right? But I grew up in the Valley. Like a lot of people don't know the Valley, but like Laughlin, St. Bernard, like that area, and that was a lot of good baseball that was played. There was a lot of teams that that guys would. Like there was Tatman Taxi and like Rodney's Raiders and like teams that came out of there, and they would all run around and beat. And it's just a great baseball environment. This all during the 70s. I'm referring to. I'm not sure it's still that way, but
yeah. Hey, enough of talk about John Boehner's hometown. I want to talk. We call this podcast "We Love Our Team." Maybe we should have said we love our Reds, but Tim, I need to ask you about your Reds fandom and some of your earliest great memories of being a Reds fan.
Ooh, so like, do I have to narrow it to just one, or can I,
Go for
Have
it.
at it.
I've got a lot of like great memories, and there's some iconic ones, but there's some kind of like out of the way ones too. Like one that I grew up. Let's see, when I like the Big Red Machine. I'd have been about 12 years old. So like that era to me, just and there's a lot of things I really remember. And one of the things that do you remember Ed Armbruster laying down the bunt and like the whole ruckus at the plate, with was it Fisk? Was it?
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, it was Fisk.
yeah, with Fisk. Like that to me is like probably not on anybody else's radar. But as a little kid, I found it fascinating because I think Ed Armbruster really was obstruction, but the umpire, who I think might have been Dave West, was just not going to change the call. And as a kid, I remember thinking like, we're getting away with one.
Well, Randy's an umpire. Randy, was it obstruction? What's
Well, first of all, if it's by a batter, it would be interference.
Okay.
So obstruction is by a defensive player, but yeah, I think it was interference. I've seen that highlight several times. It was a pretty key moment.
Yeah.
And I think that was game 4 of the series. I'm pretty sure it was game 4, and somebody stole second as a result.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
I think the throw might have even gone out into center field and may have made it to third or whatever. And
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a great there's a lot of crazy moments from those World Series. The 3 misses making out in 1970 when the runner missed a plate, the catcher missed a tag, and the umpire missed a call.
That's great. But there's just so many, and maybe I like controversy or maybe hockey because like I always think of like the great fights, like remember Pete Rose and Bud Harrelson, and at Met Stadium, I think the fans were throwing batteries on the field, and that was just so Pete, if you think about it.
So, Sparky had to pull the team off the field when they went out on defense.
Yeah, that's right. I think he just said, "I'm not putting my team out there." And and there was Eric Davis down at third base when Ray Knight bumped him off the chest bump, and holy cow, that how about the Nasty Boys? Remember, and Jack, I might have told you this story. The fight
with the Cardinals, right? The fight with the Cardinals.
It was the Cardinals. And I was going to go see the Cardinals game, and I went beforehand. I went to have a burger up at the City View up in Mount Adams, right? And so I'm sitting there having a burger with a couple of guys that I'm going to the game with, and we were late to the game, so we're watching that play on TV at the City View. So we get down there in like the second or third inning, and we had to go in. We had to enter the stadium through like that center field entrance down there on Mering Way.
Yeah.
And as we're going in, we're walking past the bullpen of the Cardinals. Now, by then, like the fracas had cleared a little bit, and Carpenter was down in the bullpen. And so we start chirping at him down at the bullpen, saying like, whatever, you crybaby or something. And like he had like rabbit ears, and he turns around and he says something to him. So then we start on with him like, you got rabbit ears. And he starts puffing up his chest and pointing. And I always thought that that the last thing that the players are supposed to do is ever act like they hurt a fan. Well,
right.
The cops come over to us and says like, hey, move along. Like you can't sit here and harass the players. And I always just thought it was great that like that after all that, he still cared about some guy who's a banker who never made it past grade school ball, telling him he should have been a bullpen catcher or something.
I was talking about that with my sons today. I can't remember what prompted it, but as Carpenter, that the fight had kind of slowed down. Everybody was and then apparently Carpenter called Dusty Baker a name, and Roland just got nuts. I mean, Roland just moved in and like moved the pile. It was
spilled into the diamond seats, I think, right?
Yeah,
like all the corporate fat cats were, retreating to the scout seat.
Molina pushed up against the screen, And I'm not proud of this, but I'm sitting at home yelling, hit him, hit him. Like I want the people
So
in
you
the
like
dining
hockey
room to
too.
like just get the hell out of him, man. But that
And
was
Scott Rowland, man, I tell you what,
oh,
that guy, I tell you what, we should have had a cage match between Scott Rowland and Norm Charlton. I think those two guys.
toughest. Yeah, I like it. I like it. When he ran into Sosha, when Charlton knocked Sosha over, that was
Did
great.
you see the interview with him? This was probably 10 or 15 years after it had occurred, and he had said that Charlton had said that he deked Eric Davis at the plate the night before, and Davis hurt his leg. And Charlton said, if I ever get a clean shot at him, I'm going to take it.
Huh.
So he's recounting the story 15 years later, and he said, wouldn't you know, the next night I'm on first base, and there's a gapper hitting, and he said, Sam Perlazzo, third base coach, is putting up the stop sign. He said, there's no way I was stopping. And he said, I ran through that. He said the whole Reds dugout was grinning, knew it was coming, and he got the better of him. I mean, Sosha wasn't a small guy, but he dropped the ball, if you remember.
I think he did.
And
I
scored
love
the
that.
run.
I love that team. So we're going to age you a little bit, perhaps. But did you ever see a game at Crossley Field?
Um, it depends what you mean by that. My grandparents tell me that I was there.
Okay.
But I was a babe in arms, and they told me that I fell asleep out. I guess it was like concrete,
The sun
like
deck.
in the outfield.
Oh,
They weren't
yeah.
even
The sun deck.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I remember as a kid. I can remember it would have been like going down to to Reading High School football stadium,
Yeah.
sitting on concrete, and that's my memory of it. Like that and driving by it on 75 when you were going somewhere is my memory. But yeah, so apparently I was there, but
I remember the sun deck was $1 to get in.
and that sounds like what a bunch of hardworking Germans would have paid.
Yeah,
That's right.
What
Yeah,
about when you went to Riverfront? You went to Riverfront many times, obviously.
Yeah.
Were you like some people? Did you sit in your assigned seat, or did you try to sneak down into the blue or green seats?
Well, I was a kid from Reading, Randy. So yeah, of course I was trying to sneak around. I remember we would, you'd go by whatever the cheapest seat was. You could get it, and down on Reading Road, if you remember, there was an old hotel place to eat called Carousel. I think it was a big deal at one point.
Yes.
But there was like a Reds Express that ran from there, and so we'd get somebody's parents to drop us off at the Carousel. We'd take the Express down. We'd go loiter around on the deck, try and get cheap seats, get in, and then you'd try and there was a point where, if you remember, there was the red seats, the green seats, the yellow seats, and then the blues, I think. And they connected at one point. You could jump over. So if you couldn't get through the ushers, you could hop over if you didn't get caught. And we would do that. But my favorite sneaking around story was it was in 1990 when the Reds were playing the Pirates in the National League Championship Series, and me and a guy I worked with, Rob Reese, who I know Jack, Rob and I on a lark kind of said, let's go scalp some seats, and we have okay seats, and we're in there, and I'm getting on. They had an elevator, and I'm getting on the elevator, and the elevator opens up, and the woman running the elevator was a woman that I went to college with, Gina Elliott. Nicest woman you ever meet. And she said, well, where are you going? I said, well, we're going up wherever our seats. And she says, well, hey, I can get you in down at the blue seats. And so I said, no kidding. And she says, yeah, come on. This is the championship series, game 6, and so she says, go sit here. And so we wind up, we're with the players' families and wives. And we walk in, and I sit down, I'm sitting next to this pretty attractive woman older than me, and it turns out it's Lou Pinella's wife. And so Rob and I are going this is great or what? And we're watching the game, and she's very talkative and nice, and says to me, well, what's your story? What's your deal? What are you doing? And what are you doing afterwards? And And I said, well, I don't know, we're going to do whatever. And well, they're winning the game. They wound up winning the game, like in a close game, like 2-1. And she said, hey, we're all going back to the Vernon Inn, or what was that? In
Vernon Manor.
Vernon Manor. And we're going to have a post-game party. You should come on by. So Rob and I go like, sure. So we walk in there, and everybody's looking at us like, who the hell are these guys? And how do they know we're at the Vernon Manor? So we got out of there real quick. We're like, we shouldn't be here. Kid from Reading doesn't belong there. So.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. I had a friend who had some tickets in that area by the wives, and they were always very nice. We got to know Eddie Tominsy's wife pretty well. She was very friendly, and my comment was, it was real diamonds and fake boobs for the most part. But,
I'd rather the other way around, huh? Yeah.
They were tough in Riverfront. And by the way, do you know anybody who calls it Synergy Field?
I really don't. I think
I don't either. It's Riverfront. It is and always will be Riverfront.
Jack, I don't think that I actually, like, now that you say it, I remember it. But boy, if you'd have asked me on recall what it was, I don't think I'd have gotten there.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's so iconic. So we talked about the moments. Are there any moments like? I know exactly where I was. I was not at the game when Eric Davis hit the home run in '90 in the first game. I know exactly where.
Dave Stewart or
off of Dave Stewart. Yeah, I was at some business meeting. I had to give a speech or something that night, and I was so upset. But so anyway, any moments like you can remember not being at the game, but like where you physically were when a moment happened?
There are two. One is very inconsequential, and one was iconic. It was when. It was during the World Series when it was Game 7, after the Carlton Fisk home run in Game 6, and we went to Game 7, and Joe Morgan hit that little blooper.
Yeah.
Like, remember, it was just a little flare kind of over second base, to score the winning run. Like, that to me, I can remember exactly where I was. I said, sitting on the floor in my mom and dad's house with, a bowl of popcorn and like it just was euphoric. Like,
yeah.
So that's like burnt into my memory.
Wow.
And then the other way less memorable one was, I don't know why I remember it, but this was during the Adam Dunn era. I don't know, what year would that have been? It would have been like early 90s, late 90s. Yeah.
2000.
I was down at Mount Lookout Tavern, sitting on the back, having a few beers with my family, and we were watching the game. And I think they were playing the Indians, from recall, and they're down. They had a lead, and they lose. Yeah, they give up like 5 runs to be in the 9th inning, being down 3 runs, and Adam Dunn hits a grand slam to walk off and win the game.
I was at Teak. It's Mount Adams.
I see. Okay, so it apparently isn't as inconsequential as I thought. I don't think the game meant anything.
No.
And I remember complaining, going like, God, come on. And then all of a sudden he jacks out and made me look wrong again.
Hey, your parents must have been wonderful, though. In 1975, you're sitting there with that bowl of popcorn. That had to be like 11:30 or midnight. And you were like in 6th or 7th grade. I love that. You obviously had great parents. Now, when you were a kid, did your parents encourage you to play baseball? And did you play baseball at
all? Yeah. Randy, I was encouraged okay, so I don't have a very good arm. I'm slow, and my kids have inherited that. And I couldn't hit. But yeah, I played baseball. I could catch pretty good, and so for a lot of my teams, I was the catcher, and I really love that because you're in the game and I can't remember, like, I don't know, 6th grade, 7th grade, something like that. They allowed you to steal, and from the time that they started allowing people to steal, if a guy got on first, there was 2 pitches before he was going to be a third.
Yeah,
and so that was the beginning of the end for me. I think that's when they moved me out to right field. And you know what that means, So from catcher to right field, I was, making dust balls by the time I was in 8th grade, So yeah, I played a fair amount of baseball. My, like I said, Reading was really good. My brother Tom was a really good baseball player. And you know what else they say? If you play at shortstop, you're probably a pretty good athlete. And Tom was always the shortstop.
Yeah.
So I would say I grew up around a lot of baseball, more so than I played a lot of baseball. So.
Yeah.
So, was baseball your favorite sport, or is it your favorite sport?
I would tell you it was my favorite sport. It's certainly the most nostalgic. Again, the sweet spot when I was 10 and 12 years old, we were the Big Red Machine. We had all that, the 70, 71, 75, 76. I'd go to bed at night with a transistor, and under my pillow. And when they'd play those West Coast games, they would be, midnight, and you're listening to the games, and you knew if you were down 2 or 3 runs in the 7th inning that you were still in it. That Tony Perez was going to, hit a 2-run double to win the game. So that was always my favorite sport and most nostalgic. And I would tell you, in recent years, but meaning the last 10 or 15 years, the Bengals football is really, I always probably have the baseball game on in the background doing whatever, but the world stops for me now when the Bengals are on. So it's probably both.
What about your 4 sons? How do they feel about baseball? Is baseball on their radar at all?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jack. I'm amazed at how much it is, because you always hear about how it's losing that demographic,
right?
And how
and your kids are like what, about 30 to down to 20 something?
My 4 sons, Sam, Jack, Hank, and Charlie. The oldest is 32. The youngest is 27. Okay. And I would tell you they are more tuned in to baseball than about anything. We got a regular text chat that goes on. Now, 2 of my sons now live in Chicago, so 2 in Cincy, 2 in Chicago, and they love being Reds fans in Chicago.
Yeah.
And,
right.
They bought, the MLB package to watch the game. My son Hank really is into it. If you need to know a rumor or what's going on, like he could tell you who plays shortstop for, the Toronto Blue Jays. I couldn't.
Right.
But they're really dialed into baseball. And I think that's kind of countercultural a little bit, but they love it. And their group of friends, I'll often go to games now, currently, with their friends. And it just seems to buck the trend that we read about. So maybe I'm living in a little bubble.
Totally. My sons are the same way for some reason. It's great. I love it. I mean, and the text messages that go back and forth during games and after games. And,
I was down at the game this past Friday night when they're playing the Cubs, and I was down there with my son Charlie and his 2 buddies, Mitch Burnett and Buck Dorger. And I'm telling you, those guys, they make the game fun. Just they're so into the game. Mitch is on the umpire, calling balls and strikes, which is ludicrous, but it's just he's doing it for fun. And he started with, I think probably the most rare event in history of Great American is hitting the sign for the Tundra to win the Tundra.
Oh yeah.
Every time there was a deep fly ball, he'd be yelling Tundra. And I don't think it's ever occurred. I don't believe so.
Hey Tim, Fifth Third Bank has a proud tradition of supporting the Reds, and you are the regional president here. And I'm going to tell the listeners that we're recording this episode outside of bankers' hours, because I think bankers. I don't even know what bankers' hours are. I think it's like 9 to 5 or 9 to 4 or something like that.
Oh, Randy, bankers' hours are. We don't care when you work your 60 hours a week.
Hey, well, and Johnny Bench was the spokesman, and you can get a credit card with the Reds logo on it and all that business. How did that all come about? And just tell us a story about Fifth Third's relationship with the Reds.
Yeah, it goes back a really long time. And in fact, Pete Rose's father worked at the bank for a long time, like 45 years. And so Pete Sr. was always around. And it was sometime in the early 70s. Well, maybe it was mid 70s. I wasn't around at that point yet. the bank was growing up. We weren't always a big bank. We were the fourth largest, maybe fifth largest bank at the time in Cincinnati. And someone said, hey, we ought to, get a spokesman. And the guy that I worked for a long time, a guy named Pat Bell, a Northern Kentucky guy, really a great guy, ran our marketing department. I subsequently worked with him for a long time. And Pat has told me the story that they were looking at both Pete and Johnny as spokespeople. And, certainly Pete had a great connection to the city. I mean, he's iconic. He hustled. He loved it. His dad was here, and in that time frame, of the Big Red Machine, he was probably the face of the Big Red Machine. Certainly there was Johnny Bench and Joe Morgan and Concepcion and you name them. And then we were also talking to Johnny, and frankly, it really came down to how professional Johnny was. He just was very well spoken. He was equally loved, and I remember them telling stories that, like, when they would ask Johnny to come to client events, he could just really work a room, and he would show up. And so ultimately, when it came down, there was just an intuition that it was Johnny, and Pat and team made that decision, I think, after a lot of debate, and it turned out really, really well for us. I don't think we have used Johnny in print or advertising media since probably the late 80s, 1990. And I know that when we still survey people, they will reference like, oh yeah, I heard Johnny on the radio, and he had been on the radio for 35 years.
He did a great job, and I watched some of the old commercials on YouTube. To our listeners, go to YouTube and you'll see him wearing some really groovy leisure suits. Did you have any in your ensemble, Tim? I mean, I needed to ask. Did you have a couple hanging in the closet somewhere?
Jack, I love a costume more than anybody. But I got to admit that I don't have that it's a hole in my wardrobe. But, I've got an idea for this, if I don't mind me pitching on your time.
Yeah, please. Yes.
Maybe you guys ought to host a party for We Love Our Team, like, anniversary celebration, and everybody come dressed in character. Like, you got to come dressed as your favorite Red. Nice. And I'll come as Johnny in a leisure suit.
Done. That is done. That's awesome. That's a great idea. Randy, we got to get on that, man.
Yeah, we got to get on that, Jack. Hey, Fifth Third is proud of its customer service, but let's talk about the Reds' customer service. When you go to GABP, how do you rate their customer service in terms of the fan experience?
Yeah, Randy, customer service is hard, right? It's hard to get 1,000 people doing the same thing all the time in a consistent manner, and it only takes a couple situations to go wrong and flare up and not be good. And I would tell you, I give the Reds, it's hard for us to do, and we strive to do it, and I give the Reds high marks. I mean, I think they really care, and I think they strive, and I know that, like, Karen Forgas and her team, and Corey Hetzer, and that whole team. We're fortunate at the bank to have a really close and long time relationship with them. But I'm down there sometimes as just a totally anonymous person, and I just think that they do a great job. Kudos to them, and could it always be better? Sure, it can always be better. If Jack gave me a dozen chocolate donuts, it could be better if he gave me 2 dozen. But I think they really do. I think they do a great job.
Well, Randy and I have a couple ways to make it better. So I want them to play, and I wonder your thoughts on this, but I want them to play the opening of Smoke on the Water every time a Reds hit a home run. Are you up for that? I mean, this is one of our agenda items on our podcast.
I think it's a good idea, but I think I would take maybe Thunderstruck by AC/DC. That's got a little better lead in. Iconic Smoke on, but it's a little slow. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll think about Thunderstruck. Randy, how about you pitch? It's your turn to pitch now, Randy.
I like the idea, Tim. After every Reds victory, kind of like the Yankees do New York, New York, I think we ought to do a little we've got a James Brown connection in Cincinnati. And so I think they ought to play I Feel Good.
See, that's a way better idea, Randy. That's way better than that.
Well, of course it is.
It's it's got a immediate hook. We've got a portrait of him right down on Liberty that was done by Artworks. Like everybody knows that's on it. That's a brilliant idea, Randy.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this up. No, I'm kidding. All right. Okay. I'm going to work. I'm going to think about Thunderstruck, but I'm thinking we are on the water. I'm not going to argue my case here. I'm not going to argue.
No, I get it. I mean, I'm not obtuse.
I get it. Don't be condescending, Tim. Come on.
It's medium.
You're being condescending. I can't take that.
You knew that before you invited me.
I know. Now, so have you gone to any? Do you go with your? Have you been to Wrigley to see the Reds play with your sons?
Yeah, so we try to do that fairly often, and obviously Wrigley is the layup because I've got two sons there, and
right.
And I will probably get there at least annually with them. And in fact, my son Hank is getting married this August 1st. It's a Friday night. He's getting married on a Friday night, and the whole. So Saturday, we're going to a Cubs game with the whole wedding for Wrigley. So, and his bride is a really Genevieve. She's a really good sports fan. Like she knows as much. She knows way more than me, as much as Hank. She's a big Chicago fan of all things, and so yeah, we'll go there. But the boys and I have traveled. You know, we've been to Denver. Cubs game. We've gone to Cleveland. I've gone to Nationals games, and I went up to the Field of Dreams games that they had.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah, that's kind of a thing, and it's just fun. I'll tell you, the Rockies have a great stadium.
I was there.
That
last
is
year.
Fantastic.
It's very cool. How do the people treat you? Okay, I mean, you wear your Reds gear and all that stuff, and
yeah, I've never really had a problem. I'm not gone to Philadelphia, but as a Reds fan, no, I've never had a problem. It's more maybe when you go to an NFL game that you get a little of the business.
Tim, I've got to ask you a really hard-hitting question here because that's what we're known for on this show is very hard-hitting questions. So I'm going to ask you, which of the following do you think will happen first in your lifetime? A Bengals Super Bowl victory, a Reds World Championship, a Bearcats National Championship, or a LaSalle State Championship in basketball?
Well, I'm going to throw out the high school question because I don't know enough about LaSalle basketball. That's just process of elimination.
There we go.
And if the question is what's the most likely to occur, be honest with you, I'm going to go with the Bengals Super Bowl. I think they're on the precipice. The way the NFL works is it kind of breeds parity, and there's a salary cap. I think it's really going to be difficult for the Reds to do that. Like they're a smaller market team, and I don't know how you keep pace with LA and Boston and New York and those type of teams. And similarly, my Bearcats, I love them. I think Wes Miller's a great coach. He's creating great talent. He's got a top, I think, six rated team coming in this year. But that whole NIL thing in basketball, or any of the college sports, I think it's going to become the haves and have-nots. There's going to be a dozen schools that can spend, $10 million and restock their team, and I don't think we have the luxury of that. And I know some of the legislation is talking about tamping that down, but even then, those deep pocket teams are going to just build bigger facilities and better. So I'm going to go with the Bengals Super Bowl. I think is more likely to occur.
I think you're probably right. All right, here you go. Another tough question here. 2 men on, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, runner on second. You got any Red in history to send up? Who's it going to be?
Can I give you a couple of names and then narrow it down? So immediately it comes to mind would be Tony Perez, Joe Morgan, or Pete Rose, right? Because, Tony was Mr. Clutch.
Yep.
Joe Morgan wasn't ever going to get cheated as an at bat. Pete's going to battle, right? And those three people, like if I had to pick my favorite Red, it would come from one of those three, probably Joe Morgan, but so one of those, and then Joey Votto isn't going to get cheated, like in his he's and Scott Rowland we talked about, like those three guys were really good. But if I got to pick, I think I'm going to go Tony. He had a history of I think his batting average with runners on base is 50 points higher than his regular batting average. So I'll go Tony Perez.
There's John Arardi, our friend, wrote a book about Tony, which is really good, From Cuba to Cooperstown. And there's some statistic called latent tight. I think if it's within 2 runs in 7th inning or later, and Perez's batting average in latent tight was like off the charts. I mean, it really was, in terms of, it's hard to measure clutch. I think that's sometimes a little overrated, but I think that's a decent measure of, what clutch is all about. So.
Yeah, some guys hit a bunch of home runs when you're already up by 5 home runs, right? But yeah. Tony always seemed to hit them when they mattered,
For sure.
I'd take Tony, I think.
That's a good call.
I'm going to give you a similar question, Tim. We're in a big game. It's nearing the end of the season. There's bases loaded in the top of the 9th. We're playing at GABP. Bases loaded. There's 2 outs. The Reds are clinging to a 1-run lead. Who are you bringing in from the bullpen of all pitchers from all time on the Reds?
So, okay. Do I have to pick a reliever, or could it have been a starter also?
Any pitcher, I think that,
I'm going to give you an answer for each. How about if it was a starter, it would probably be Mario Soto. I mean, I think he had gas and he had control. And when he was at the top of his game, boy, him and Don Gullett were both, when they were at the top of they were really, really tough.
Yeah.
But sticking to the traditional answer of a reliever, I would probably, Franco was really good. John Franco was really good. But I would probably take Rob Dibble.
Nice.
The Nasty Boys were really good. Randall Kirkmeyer had, I think, way more saves, but Dibble was just focused and clutched.
Not Aroldis Chapman.
Aroldis, for the 5 years that he was here, right, he was fun to watch. But I think there were times where he'd get a little squirrely, a little wild every now and then. And so if it's bases loaded, but I like him. I'm not disrespecting, but I would think I would still stick with Dibble. Aroldis was tough.
I remember, speaking of memories and where you were, I do remember where I was watching Chapman's first game for the Reds, and they were playing the Brewers, and his first batter was Jonathan Lucroy, and he just made him look silly. And Lucroy's pretty good. I mean, he just made him look silly. It was literally one of those things where you just kind of giggled because it was like, this poor guy doesn't have a chance. I mean, it just was.
By dumb luck, I happened to be at that game. I didn't go to see him. Happened to be there, and I can remember when they brought him in. It was electric. I mean, it was like a rock star status, and he's throwing, that gun's lighting up at 99, 100, 101. The crowd was going wild. I think if you dig into my Instagram page, I even posted, it's like one of my early posts, Aroldis Chapman throwing fire.
I think I would bring in Emilio Pagan.
Soto, I can't remember the year, but he holds a single season record. I have 274 strikeouts in a season. That's just kind of a
Chapman did?
No, Soto did.
Oh, Soto. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a season thing. I mean, it's like, and that was back when guys didn't strike out as much. I mean, he was an amazing, he really was good. He kind of gets lost because the Reds weren't very good for the most part when he was pitching for him, which is really too bad because
he was dominating.
He was great. Just a great.
He was like an instant win. You're going to get every 5th day, he was going to win out of him. So it'd be interesting to go back and look at that season you're talking about, see how many wins the Reds had and how many were his starts.
I bet it was a very, very high percentage. Very high percentage. So another way we put our guest on the spot here, is while you're in the hot seat there, is especially a native Cincinnati and like yourself, what's your favorite ice cream? Where are we going?
We're going to Mount Washington Creamy Whip.
Which Creamy Whip?
Yeah, I mean, great. It's great. I love it. But I'm a Creamy Whip guy.
All right. Is
Yeah,
anyone in particular?
Mount Washington, right
No,
there, right on Mount Washington. I
yeah,
know the West
right on
Siders,
Beach,
they
right on
love
Beach.
their putzes, right? Like,
Yeah, I got my
but
putzes. Right.
yeah, of course, but I'll, I'll take you over to Mount Washington. A kid's cone vanilla with rainbow jimmies, not sprinkles, jimmies.
How did you know that was my favorite? Yeah.
You're an open book.
That's
How about your favorite pizza locally?
Locally, so if we're just going regular pizza, I love La Rosa's sausage pizza. The sausage is so good. So La Rosa's sausage. If we're doing highbrow, I'll do a Dewey's buffalo chicken with bacon. So and there's a really good place down in Florence, Tom's Papadino's. Have you ever been there?
Oh yeah, no, I've never been.
Holy cow, that's really good pizza too. So yeah, for the Northern Kentucky.
Have you ever gone to the Pizza Night fundraiser down in Sawyer Point?
At Sawyer
It's in the
Point.
fall. It benefits the Barrett Cancer Center,
Huh.
and they get pizza. I mean, they get everybody's there, and with booths, and you pay one price. I think you just eat till your heart's content. And I was there a couple years ago, and I was standing in the Taglio line, and standing in front of me was Mark LaRosa, and I was like, "Does your dad know you?"
Well, we were talking about this in the lunchroom the other day here at the bank, and a lot of I'll say the younger people. Now, for me, that's anybody under 40, but
Sure.
the younger people were talking about Comparosa. Like everybody was like, "Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's like in Fort Wright or Fort Mitchell, I think." And like that was the prevailing answer for most of that demographic. I was like, "Well, I got to go find out about Comparosa."
Got to check it out. All right, chili. We going Skyline, Gold Star, or other?
I'm going yes. I like them both. And if I had to pick other, it'd be my mom's. My mom makes a great chili.
Is she a Greek style, or does she make it like the old, red and heavy with meat and beans and that sort of thing?
Yeah, she's German. She's not making it.
Yeah.
It's heavy with beans and yeah.
Absolutely.
You eat it for 3 days and
Better on the third. It's better on the third day, man. It's better.
you got it.
Am I right?
I love leftovers.
That's fantastic. Well, this was great, Tim. Thank you for your time. This was great. You brought up some great memories for me. I'll tell you you're a fracas guy. I mean, we know you're a fracas guy.
I
You want to take it out in the alley, Jack?
I think the Reds need a good fight, a memorable fight.
For sure. I think one of the downsides of instant replay, I think, is not having the manager on either side of the team being able to charge out of the dugout and jack his team up or get like that. I miss that. Like, I think human error is part of the charm of baseball, right? And it's like a good fight. That was the same thing. I mean, we'll never see Earl Weaver again. Like, how great was he? Like, or Pinella throwing
a base in right field ever again.
Yeah. So yeah, I like a little controversy. A little mix it up.
Well, thanks, Tim, very much. Yeah. We appreciate your time. Bankers hours. What were bankers hours, by the way?
You know what? Okay, now Tim, tell me if I don't remember the guy's name. I can see him. He was sort of bald, a little rotund, but his line was, "Yeah, we work half days at Fifth Third, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m."
Well, you think I want to describe attribute that someone you describe as rotund? I mean,
rotund's a little, yeah.
It sounds like Clem Binger. That would be a Clem Binger.
It wasn't. I would have remembered it was Clem. It was. Oh shit! It's gonna drive me crazy. I'll get back to you, but that was his line. We work half days, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Randy, from memory, what I believe it was is that bankers hours was a thing. Like, where on Wednesdays they would close at noon or 2 o'clock, and I think it was. They said so the bankers could go play golf, and it was so that the farmers could go do something too in the country. So, but that was long after I arrived.
Yeah. Bill Moran.
Oh, Bill Moran, yeah.
It was Bill Moran's line. It was Bill Moran's
I'll be sure to tell him you described him.
Thank you for a ton. Okay.
Tim, thank you very much.
Change it to barrel chested.
Sorry to get a little sidetracked there, but thank you very much.
Well, I'm flattered and honored you invited me. I'm surprised everybody cares what I have to say, but it was great to have a place to say it.
Give it up to Tim Elsbrock, Fifth Third Bank.
There.
I feel good.
I feel good. Hang with us for a second here, Tim.
All right.
The whole town's batting about Cincinnati. What a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.